For this video, I'm going to be showcasing some Mythgard gameplay, but not in the traditional way. I wanted to take the opportunity to also show off one of my favorite features that Mythgard has, and that is the replay system. So in the client, there is the option to watch a replay of games that you have played in the past, and I'm a huge fan of this feature for a number of reasons. First and foremost, when I was playing in the Artifact closed beta, Artifact actually had this, and it was the #1 way that I got much better at Artifact. There was a pretty steep learning curve with that game, and I was trash, I was garbage, but I got a whole lot better when I was able to watch games back and realize exactly where things had went wrong, and I love that Mythgard has that. But also, for me personally as a content creator, sometimes I'm playing the game on mobile, I'm playing the game on lunch breaks or whatever the case may be, and I'm not always recording everything. And so when I play other card games, there's times where I play an amazing game that I really want to share with people, and then I don't have a way to do that because I wasn't recording at the time of the game. Mythgard, however, because of the replays, gives me the option to go back and share those with you, and I actually have a game that meets that criteria, so we're going to check that out. And I'm going to be providing some after the fact commentary while also showcasing the really awesome replay system. So if you're not familiar with it and you don't know where it is, when you click on your little icon here and it brings you up to this screen, typically it defaults to collection, but you have this history location. And when you're on the screen, there's a couple of ways that you can access a replay. So with any one of these, you can right click and you'll see watch match. If you do that, then you're going to be watching it from that player's perspective. Or you can click on the little eye icon here, and then you'll watch it from your perspective. Now, the perspective technically doesn't matter because you can see the hands of both players during the replay. But if you just prefer it to be oriented so that you're always on the bottom to kind of mimic normal gameplay, then you'll want to click on the eye. Now, the watch match thing is actually relevant because, real quick, I want to showcase something else. When you are in, say, ranked, right, there's also tabs here, and one of them is action, so you can see that this action thing is going on. So if we wanted to, we could click on the eye on any one of these games that either just ended a few minutes ago or that are even live, and you can watch the match. Similarly, you can just right click on things and watch as well. So if you're wondering why that watch match thing is the way it is in your history, it's because it's mimicking the same functionality that exists here. So yeah, you can watch other people play or view other people's games up to a limit, right? It does stop scrolling after a bit, but it's again a really cool feature for a content creator like me. Awesome, right? I could jump in and I could cast matches if I wanted to. I've considered even doing that on stream a bit, but anyway, let's go showcase one of my replays, one of my games. So I'm going to come to my history here, and I was playing against Vestin, so we're looking for this one right here. This was from 4 days ago, but this was a very close game, a very fun game in my opinion. I was testing out one of the featured decks that I was offered. We're going to go ahead and click on this so we jump in. And they were also on a featured deck. Now, if you're not familiar, the featured decks, you get 2 of them, and they rotate a couple of times a week. And when you are playing a featured deck, it kind of tells you. That's how I knew that we were both on featured decks. But not everybody is shown the same ones, which I also think is really important and really cool because you don't want the same 2 decks to be constantly showing up on the ladder, right? So anyway, post commentary, right? So after the fact. The deck that I'm playing, this featured deck, is orange and yellow, and it's token-based, but also control-based. The idea is you use tokens to chump block early, then you use powerful removal spells and board sweeps, and then long-term, because you just slowly win by attrition with tokens and you get ways to buff them up, that's how you take over the game. Early on, my opponent played 3 mazes here, which is amazing, pun intended. And as you can see here, this meant that they were going to be trying to generate an awful lot of card advantage. So while I had my own maze over here, he needed to play some of my early kind of token generators to try to contest their mazes so that I could stop them from just drawing a ton of cards. Now, they countered that by sacrificing 1, using the Foul Harvest, I went ahead and I paused this video here so we can kind of catch up on the commentary. They also developed Zolia, who is one of my favorite cards in the game. This is just like an amazing card because it does so much. It's offensive and defensive. It gives you kind of the best of both worlds. The 1/5 stat line is okay. Obviously, the 1 attack is not much to write home about, but literally everything else on this card is great. So it has Lurker, so you can hide it behind some other minions if you want. The +1 to give another minion Blight 1 is amazing, so that's what they had done here. That's why this is kind of glowing. Blight, if you're not familiar, the creature at the start of the turn gets -1/-1 equal to the Blight number. So at the start of my turn, this is going to get -1/-1 and die, basically. So that's how you give energy to Zolia. For removing 2 energy, you can give another minion +3/+0. Now, at first glance, I remember the very first time I seen this card, at first glance I was like, oh, that's neat. But it's a permanent +3/+0. So that means that you can take literally almost any minion in the game and make them a pretty severe threat. This adds up. So this is like the offense side of things. Blade is the defense. It's a control tool. And then if you do manage to get her all the way up to 6 energy, then you get you are branded. So if you're playing from, or if you're coming from Magic the Gathering, it's very similar to emblems with Firewalkers, right? So you are branded with, at the end of your opponent's turn, they lose 5 life. Wow. So this card is great, and I was not very happy when they slammed this down at this point, but we can go ahead and resume. We're currently playing at normal speed. Now again, cool replay features, right? We can jump ahead, we can speed things up, we can slow things down if we want. And again, I knew I needed to get rid of this, and I didn't have many good ways to do it in my hand. So that meant I had to put bodies there to contest. And they wanted to slow that down. So they sidestepped me, dropped the old Miso Libre here in front because it's luchadorable. And I knew it was going to be an issue. I also knew I had to contest this maze, so this body went down, and then we ended up top decking that turn the Seal of Exile. And they give me the old well played here because, again, Zolia, if left unchecked, she's just a nightmare. So this is where things kind of start to go south for me. Multiple Miso Libres, this card is great. Means that they're going to start slowly taking control of the board over time. The 3/4 stat line is great. The stun effect is great. So they get to set up value trades. And I was in a bit of a pickle here. Harvester comes down. This is just a lot of value as well. Great Awaken, great Demise. 6/6 for 6 is quality. What I had working in my favor at the time was that I had a bunch of cards in my hand and I still had more ways to generate cards. So I felt pretty confident that I could come back from this, from that board state. But then what happens is they really start to put the pressure on me, and I get stuck having to use this vicious cycle to kill this Awaken. I don't believe it's this turn, I think it's the next turn. But when it happens, I essentially am giving them 2 cards, because this has the Demise of draw a card, and the vicious cycle makes them draw a card. So it kind of evens things up in the resource battle. So here comes the vicious cycle, because this is just a big body, and with me having just played the ring, I don't want to lose this. I don't want this to take a ton of durability damage right away. So vicious cycle kind of evens things up. And then this is also again where part 2 of my nightmare continues, right? I really start to fall behind here because my opponent gets the twins. So this is a mythic pair. This is a 5/4, but when it awakens, you add a 0-cost 4/5, and while they are both in play, they've got Overrun and Regen 3. I try to answer with Solomon's Gale, and we'll go ahead and take a pause here for a moment. So one of the things that I really like is Solomon's Gale can be both offensive and defensive once you get that breach going, because Alpha Strike is ridiculous. But I wanted to highlight something else, which is Soma Oasis here is a fantastic stall tool. So this is an enchantment that says minions created in this lane are immortal until your next turn. And that's really important because in this game, in Mythgard, all your creatures kind of serve as blockers, right? So being able to put something down that's just not gonna die and can soak up damage like this was a pretty big deal for me. So I don't take a lot of damage as a result of this coming down. You're gonna see them move some creatures away. Sapo comes down. Now this was a really painful play on my part because this is a 10/10 warded creature, and I catch a break. I top deck the Misanthropia, which means I effectively get a good board wipe. So everything on the board gets Blight 3, which means that everything's going to die except for these two, but they're going to get smaller. And then after I played the Misanthropia, this comes down to serve as a chump blocker for this, and this came down to be my chump blocker for this, right? So again, just trying to make sure that they're not getting any damage through while they have this advantage. Now, we can see the cards in hand are not very great for them, but I was really worried at this moment because I was like, man, I'm behind on board. I don't have cards working for me. Then Parry comes up. Parry's a great drawing tool, really sets things up. And this is where we start to mount the comeback. This is where, after the Misanthropia, I start clawing back. Now, we have our second one here, but I want to hold on to this, right? There's going to be a couple of points here where you could argue I could have played it. So, like right now, for example, I could get a decent amount of value. But the reason that I end up opting out of this is because I know it's the last one I have in my deck. And with the in-game deck tracker, so I'm actually going to pause this and mention that as well. With the in-game deck tracker, it's really easy for my opponent to keep track of the fact that I only have one of these left, and if I use this, then they know there's no risk anymore. They can flood the board as much as they want. So I want to make them hesitate and play around this. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, hey, I didn't know there was an in-game deck tracker, it's there, and this is not just for replays. This will come up when you're playing the game as well. Over here, there's this little arrow on the right-hand side. It's just barely there. But if you click it, boom. In-client deck tracker. Now you can see all of the cards that are in your deck, in your hand, in play, and in your boneyard. Even if they are banished, you can see that as well. Now, as far as stuff that is in your deck, there's some really useful information here as well. So when you see a card, the number of dots over here represent the number of copies in your deck. So for example, I still have 3 mazes in my deck, 1 vicious cycle, 2 wonder drugs. Now the color of the dots is also important. That tells you if those cards have already been burned or not. So for example, I've drawn both of my wonder drugs and I burned them both to use them for resources. And that's important because when you burn a card, that actually gives knowledge to your opponent as well. So while you're in here for this deck tracker thing, right now it says Charmer. If I click the arrow, it goes over to my opponent. So every card here that says like deck, we can see right now because I'm in the replay. However, normally throughout the course of the game, in the deck area, you'll just see cards that they have burned. So when you burn a card because it burns face up and you can see it, it does show up in the deck tracker. You can keep track of, you know, things that are still in your opponent's deck. It's just a really cool feature. So again, deck tracker exists in client. Replays exist in client. Mythgard is packed with features. Let's get back to this game. Again, they had a big board. We wiped it. Then they dropped some mythics on us. And then we cleaned them up. And then they were mounting a third attempt at trying to establish this board. And we're trying to fight and force these trades. And we're doing a pretty good job here. But you can see more stuff coming down. We have the Misanthropia. But as I said before, if I can help it, I want to avoid using it because I need to make my opponent play around that. So we use the effigy here as cycle, which then turns into a maze. The maze is going to be really nice because with the ring, it means that we can get, you know, a pretty comfortable early draw card from that as well. And we're going to need it because this Temptation, great as a finisher, but not really helping me right now. And then, boom, all of a sudden, Sappho comes up. We use the Temptation there to just to trade. Again, I'd rather use one of my Temptations as opposed to this because this is a very powerful effect. And, you know, we have the benefit now after the fact of seeing that their hand isn't that great. But at the time, I was really nervous that they were going to continue playing bombs. Instead, I keep drawing bombs. So we've drawn the Sappho. which is great. We've drawn the Universal Hulkin, and then when we top deck the second Soma Oasis, this means that we can play the Hulkin with confidence, knowing it's not going to go anywhere, because it's got the Immortal for a turn. And then that buys us time so that next turn we can start empowering it. Now, with this, I usually try to get Alpha Strike first, because that's the one that's going to keep your minion alive the longest, and that's exactly what happened there. We very quickly gave it Alpha Strike and made a trade. Then we also just, again, slapped down another minion here to keep stalling. My opponent answers with this very, very good orbital jamming satellite, which removes the Immortal because it suppresses the creature. But we answer back with a big Sapo the Devourer. Big because it got rid of a very reasonable, very massive Harvester that had come back from their Journey of Souls. That's why it didn't go to their Boneyard, in case you're wondering. But at this point, now I've got two big creatures, two big threats on the board. I top decked the other Temptation that I had shuffled away, and this is where we really start to make the comeback. Now, I take that Temptation there because, right? Because with Temptation, then you return it to the owner's hand with its mana cost reduced by 4 permanently. Now, again, that was an ephemeral creature because it was created with the Reconstruct. So if you're wondering why I used Temptation there, it's because it allowed this to attack. I got extra damage out of it, and I knew it was just as good as removal. So it might have seemed like a bit of a cavalier play, but I knew I was turning the corner and I wanted to start pushing damage, especially since this has been, at this point, overpowered to have both the Alpha Strike and the Overrun, which are the two most important empowers. And so they're going to do their best to try to stall, but with the top deck of this Seal of Exile, we end up getting the victory. The Overrun goes over the top. We get the Seal, and then we're going to see the Infuse and then push it in. So very, in my opinion, fun game because there was a lot of moments where it felt like I was really behind on board. They got a big board, you know, 2-3 times, fought back, stabilized, found some bombs, found some finishers to close out the game, and that's it. There you have it. So again, the real point, the real thing that I wanted to do was just showcase the replay feature, because if you're not familiar with it, it's amazing. So you can watch your own games back, you can fast forward, reverse, check things out, analyze your own plays, and then as I said before, don't forget that if you want to check out some other folks as well, you can come here to this action area and watch some games. So here, just to show it out, Hanselite here. Hanselite is somebody who's in my Discord server, hangs out in my Twitch streams at times, very nice fellow. So I can click this, and it says Charmer is spectating, and we're watching him.
You in Valhalla.
So again, really cool feature as far as the spectating goes. Really cool features. I'll back out now. You get the idea. Really cool features for the replay. In-game deck tracker. I know I'm beating this horse to death, but it's just amazing that this game has so many features already. I'm really excited. I'm glad that people can finally jump in. So if you're not familiar, the beta is open now. So you can play this on Steam, iOS, Android. There are no more account wipes. You can dive right in, get going. I'm thrilled that I can finally start doing more Mythgard stuff. So anyway, if you made it this far, if you listen to all my ranting, if you listen to me assassinate that horse and then defile its corpse, aka beat that horse to death, I appreciate it. Thank you. I love you. Until next time, I hope to catch you in the next video.